Hello everyone to this quick intermediary tutorial on how to paint a Grimdark Yellow. I'm doing a small force of Imperial Fists who will accompany my system of battle, and because I had more fun building 3 intercessors than building 3 arcoflagellants for the upcoming arcoflagellant speed paint video, I thought I would just film this short tutorial in between. What you will need if you want to paint yellow like I do, you need to prime your model with Incubate Darkness and Wraithbone from the top in a senatorial way. Then you will need Incubate Darkness, Joker Arrow Orange, which belatedly died on me, and I hope I can get enough pigments out of it. Imperial Yellow, Screaming Skull, and last but not least, eventually, Ulthuan Grey. There are mainly 2 areas I want to cover with this. One is the inside of the leg, and one is the shoulder pad over here. For the legs, I use Incubate Darkness a little bit thinned, and I paint I pre-shade all my shadows, only the deepest shadows. I'm very careful to not paint too much of it. Lightly adjusting the senatorial primer, so to say, and I go undiluted right underneath where the shadows are really stark. Should be really dark when no light will go. The Incubate Darkness might seem to be an odd choice, but you will see in the end why it makes sense to use it here and why we don't use it, or don't use it too much on the shoulder pad. We only want it over here where the light cast the shadow from the backpack, and maybe a thin line down here. We could add a little scratch and a dot, something like that. For later we can also do that down here. See that we get it a little bit darker, and also deepen the shadow around here. I highly appreciate that you do the yellow armor first before you go with the other paints, because I found that while you have to be quite neat after you have done the yellow, when you paint the brown and the black and stuff, it is way more easier to overpaint your yellow base coat than it would be to... That makes no sense. Forget what I said. Just try it out, find your own way. I'm lost track, so we'll just go on from here. So darkest shadows, incubi darkness. Now comes the trick. We now blend from around the highest lights down to the incubi darkness. But we want to leave bright spots of the white. Prime OK. These won't be the final edge highlights. It's just a pre-shading, so to say. Same goes over here. The main light reflection, or I would like to paint the main light reflection over here, and then have another edge highlight on the outside. So we need this area here covered in Joker Arrow Orange 2. This might look tedious at the moment, but as you go and as you learn where to place which highlight, it will come like second nature. You may try to blend here and there over the incubi darkness, but we don't need to do that overly much. Just make sure that in the darker areas there's no white left, and that there's white where the main reflection will be on the armor. If you do something wrong around that stage, you can easily cover up mistakes with Ulthuan Grey. I don't know if I don't have any on the palette. Take a little bit just to demonstrate it. For example, we could clean up that little bit here, add another source of light, and we could also brighten up that part. And make this area a little bit neater. I'm kind of stretching out the brush strokes at the moment, so you can easily follow what I do. I could paint this a lot faster, but I want you to see what I'm doing. So this is pretty much the pre-shading done on the leg, where it's pretty much the same on the shoulder pad over here, but you might have noticed that I used a lot more blue around here, because this area down here gets much less light than the shoulder pad gets, and it will look odd if that area is too dark. I even go so far to glaze over the blue so that only a little hint of the orange is there. Don't mix Incubi Darkness with orange or with a yellow later, because it will instantly look green, and it will look more green as it would if we glaze it on top of the other colors. What I will do now, I will pick out that area down here with Incubi Darkness, because it's a really hard shadow. That's the only getting in the way with the tablet, sorry. That's the only area over there where we might need it perhaps a little bit, just a little bit over here. Again, the optional cleaning, defining with Rethought Grey. And that's it with the pre-shading. There are lots of different ways to paint yellow, of course. So try to find what kind of yellow you like, what kind of yellow you want to achieve, and then have a look at all the various tutorials that are out there and see which kind of yellow you prefer to paint. That doesn't necessarily have to be the yellow that looks best, because in most cases that would be the yellow that's the hardest to paint. So here comes the trick. Imperial Yellow on my wet palette. I use it half thin. It's quite a tricky consistency. I don't want to pool it, and I don't want to be opaque, and that's almost like wet dry brushing, so to say. And again, I will draw my brush strokes out a bit so you can better see what I do. The aim is here to get coverage on all the areas. And going brighter by just giving the area another go of yellow when it's a little bit dry. So you see the movement I make with my brush is pretty much like dry brushing, just with more paint and wet paint on my brush. Probably there's a name for that technique. Shouldn't be something too new. And it's pretty much go over each area so long until you like the yellow tone. I'll have to get a little bit more. I did another test model before this, of course, and I painted all the other details before I did the yellow, and then came about this dry brushing movement, and of course I painted all the details over with yellow, and it just didn't look good. This is not as smooth as it would be if you would do it by traditional glazing, but you're not here to learn how to paint traditional yellow, but Grimdark version. So now we have a nice yellow finish. As said, as you want, when you want it brighter, just give it another layer of Imperial Yellow. Now I'll do just a few edge highlights and details with Screaming Skull, just so that we see what effect this will have. Picking out the brightest spots again. And trying to grab just a few edge highlights, just those that one will look at, that people will see when you miss them. Of the whole process, this edge highlighting and build up of scratches is the most time consuming, I would say. If you get a grip on where to place shadows and highlights, of course, that is. Same over here. Those edge highlights on the shoulder pad actually would look better if you had painted this area a bit more orange, or would have used a bit more incubi darkness. But I am still experimenting myself, so feel free to vary in the distribution of those 3 paints. So we already have created a nice gradient, and pretty fast. Well, it's 20 minutes now into the video, but as said, if you do your brush strokes faster, you could be could have done way more than I have done now. The last step, almost as usual, is give it a slight light wash with Agrex Earthshade. Almost. Yeah, it's more like glazing it with Agrex, so that the wash goes into the deepest recesses, adds contrast, tones down the armor, and gives us a nice brown warm cover. And what I try to do now is get it away with my finger from the highest points, so that the screaming skull highlight remains. And that last step too will give a bit more definition to the shoulder plate, the shoulder pad over here, as you can see. So that's basically it. The glazing with Imperial Yellow and the washing with the Agrex probably is the most satisfying and the fastest step that you have. And after painting all the armor panels, you still can block in the other colors like black, brown, stuff like that, but that's for another video. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on how to paint a darker or Grimdark version of Yellow. Stay tuned, be excellent to each other, and keep your eyes peeled for my Imperial Fists and the next upcoming tutorial, speed painting Arc of Flaglands in 15 minutes. See you soon.